We have an incredible lineup of speakers.
Martha Stewart, everyone.
We welcome to the stage Akon.
Former First Lady of the United States.
Every single one of them is an explorer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Elevate Live. My name is Razor Suleiman, and I'm going to be your host today for today's amazing show. I wanted to welcome our thousands of guests to hear directly from Silicon Valley icon. Guy Kawasaki is on the show today to share some of his most important life lessons, talking about past economic times that we've had, and really lessons for business leaders around how to best navigate these uncertain times. At Elevate, our mission is to unite the world's innovators to solve society's greatest challenges. And I couldn't think of a greater challenge of our generation than what we are now dealing with today with COVID. Now more than ever, we need to communicate with our community. We need to connect with our thought leaders so that we can get the facts that we need to move forward as a society, as business leaders. And so we are so excited to have Guy Kawasaki today. Before we get started, I want to share some exciting news with everybody. We have just confirmed that Kara Swisher, Silicon Valley media mogul, is going to be joining us next week on Elevate Live, April 22nd at 12 p.m. Eastern. She'll be joining us. We will send you a link to be able to sign up and register for that. And today, I really wanted to encourage everyone to join in the conversation. You know, we want to make this as interactive and as engaging as possible for everyone. So we're going to be using the hashtag Elevate Live on our social channels. Please give us your comments, your feedback, ask questions. We really want to make this as an engaging experience as possible. For those of you who want to ask a question directly to Guy Kawasaki, you can do that as well. Go to the Zoom tab on the QA tab on your Zoom browser and share your questions with Guy Kawasaki. If you don't feel like sharing a question, be sure to go there and maybe upvote a question so that we make sure that we get to the most pressing questions from our live audience today. And so without further delay, I have a great privilege of introducing a good friend of mine and Silicon Valley icon. Welcome to the show, Guy Kawasaki. He's a widely respected expert on entrepreneurship, venture capital, marketing. In fact, I'm going to keep embarrassing you, Guy. He was the original member of the Apple team, handpicked by Steve Jobs to be the first evangelist for Apple. Since then, he has written 15 best-selling books. One of my personal favorite, I grew up reading The Art of the Start. It was my Bible. Guy Kawasaki is a highly sought-after keynote speaker around the world. He's inspired millions, and he's launched his new podcast called Remarkable People. Guy Kawasaki, welcome to Elevate Live. It's so great to seeing you.
Thank you very much. That introduction was mostly accurate.
Don't let the truth get away in front of a good story.
Exactly.
Guy, it's great to have you on the show. Before we get into our formal questions, I just want to check in with you. You know, how are you doing? How are your friends and family dealing with COVID?
Sure.
Please share.
So I have been in voluntary isolation for about 25 days now. So I have not really interacted with anyone except a small number of members of my family, my wife and a couple sons in the last 25 or so days. I have waved through a window to the UPS and Instacart people, but that's it. I've not driven for 25 days. I haven't had avocado toast for 25 days. I mean, I'm dying here. I'm also I'm in near Menlo Park, California. We also have a house in Santa Cruz, California, and I'm in the Menlo Park house. Half of my family's in the Santa Cruz house. So they're the half that could be surfing, and I'm the half that cannot be surfing. So it's killing me. But Hey, I'm healthy. They're healthy. I count my blessings.
Yeah, no, I think we are all wake up fortunate when we do have our health. You realize what's important. Guy, you talked about some of the difficult things you're experiencing, and we all are. I don't know about you, but I can't keep watching the news anymore. It's just negative headline after negative headline. So when I do get a chance to check in with people, I always love asking them, what's bringing you joy?
Uh, bringing me joy is being on
Hmm.
Elevate. I mean, this is the high point of the whole pandemic for me. I don't. I I also, in addition to being on Elevate, uh, my podcast is bringing me great joy. I happen to my favorite stage of writing a book is editing, and I love to edit, and I just edit and edit and edit, and I have discovered that podcasting is a lot of editing too. So I take the raw audio file and I upload it, or someone uploads it for me. We combine multiple tracks. And then I use this product called Descript, which enables you to edit text to edit audio. So wrap your mind around that. Right. So audio goes up to the cloud, it gets transcribed. You see a text transcription. If you delete things from the text, it deletes it from the audio. So every interview is about an hour. I probably spend 3 or 4 hours more editing every one. And then a sound designer spends 3 or 4 more hours. So that sounds like a little bit of masochism, but I enjoy that process a great deal.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear the podcast is going well. I actually going to have a little story. I'm going to go off script for a second and share a story about your podcast. You were at Elevate in September 2019. You're on the main stage at an incredible keynote. And I know that Martha Stewart, who was also at Elevate, was on your target list of people to interview for your podcast. And, at the time, Martha was like, I'm going to just hold off on doing media. I'm just going to enjoy being with my, guests and people at Elevate. And you never take no for an answer. I remember you hanging out when she was done by her dressing room, and you're like, Razor, can you introduce me? Can we have a 5-minute conversation? And of course, she was gracious. She said yes. You got in there, you pulled out the microphone, and you went into full podcast interview mode, and you got an interview with Martha Stewart. You never stop hustling. It was so inspiring to see you do what you do better than anybody.
Hey, Razor, I learned that kind of chutzpah from you, bro. So
Uh, you are too kind. Guys, so today we're going to frame our conversation in 3 parts. We're going to first talk about the imminent health crisis we're dealing with around the world. We're then going to talk about the economic implications and stimulus packages our governments are putting together. And then third, we're going to talk about the recovery, right? When we beat COVID, what do we need to do to sort of prepare for that? Is that good with you, Guy?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so let's talk about the current health crisis. When you look at leadership, right? Whether it's our federal government, the president of the U.S. or the prime minister here, tell me in your own experience, who's doing this right and who's totally effing this up?
Well, I would say that on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is absolutely knocking it out of the park, providing leadership, confidence, faith, science-based, medical facts, all that kind of stuff. That's a 10. 1 is totally blowing it. I'd say Trump is -10. So I don't know how you could do it worse. I think it's an embarrassment to the United States. I think all this talk about building walls between the U.S. and Canada and all that kind of stuff is ludicrous. I could not be more negative if you really want to know the truth. It's just a shocking lack of leadership, reliance on science and facts, lack of empathy. You want to know how I really feel?
The Mexican people are like, hey, Trump, where's your wall? Can you put your wall up now quickly, please? Because I think some people are feeling that same sentiment. Who's doing this well? Is there a leader that you've seen really take a really leadership position on this?
One thing you have to conclude by looking at leaders around the world is that, generally speaking, women are doing it better than men. If you look at New Zealand, you look at Germany, you look at Taiwan, we're seeing a trend here that women are handling this as leaders better than men. So, God, that's look at New Zealand. I mean, New Zealand can control a pandemic and guns. Hallelujah, man.
I couldn't agree with you more. Back to your fact-based, amongst the countries listed, 4 out of the 5 Nordic countries are also led by female leaders. And the one that's struggling in Sweden, actually, who's pretty much ignored all of the physical distancing rules, led by a man, was slow to act and is now suffering. So it's such an interesting, there's going to be such great case studies and data around who figured this out and whose people suffered as a lack of poor leadership.
Razor, there are days that I think the only explanation for what's going on is that we are a simulation, and that God or some programmer, we're like a virtual life, and they're saying, okay, so let's try this little experiment on Earth. And first we'll send in a narcissistic, misogynist, sexist, person to lead the most powerful economy. And let's see what happens then. And then let's introduce a pandemic and see what happens then. And we're living in a simulation. And one day we're going to open the little door and we're going to see, wow, like Men in Black. That last scene in Men in Black. I don't. You can't make this stuff up.
I couldn't agree more. So let's talk about entrepreneurs, tech leaders, business leaders. What can they be doing in their own companies right now to help their employees or their communities around the health crisis? What could they be doing in their own backyards?
So I definitely have a list of thoughts, and if you indulge me, I'll give you all my thoughts. Okay? I prepared, Razor. I prepared for this presentation. Can you believe that? So when Kara Swisher comes on and Mark Cuban comes on, see if they prepared. So anyway, here are 10 things I think that would help business people during this time. Number one is to understand that I just touched my face. Oh my God, that's a bad example. Number one is you have to run the right race. And the metaphor I'd like to use is we're not running a sprint. It's more like a marathon. And it's not 100 yards, it's 26 miles. And to further that sports analogy, I'd make the case that it's a decathlon marathon where you have to be good at multiple events, not just running a long race. So that's number one. Understand we're in a decathlon marathon. Number two is that right now for businesses, you basically have to focus on cash. It's not about maintaining your image and your brand. It's about survival. So cash is king. Number three is I think you have to take control of your distribution. That, if you were going through multiple tier distribution where Amazon was the bulk of your business, and then Amazon decides that your kind of product is not essential, so Amazon Prime is going to go away for you, and it's going to take 30 days to deliver stuff. So you are depending on Amazon and its amazing distribution, and all of a sudden Amazon makes a decision, you're not essential. So you have to start doing business direct without multiple tiers. Number four would be to milk your installed base. The easiest sale is to someone who's already bought something from you before. Hopefully you have an email database and you're using, Salesforce or something, some CRM thing. So go back to your base. Number five would be my advice, and this is much easier to say than do. It's to cut deeper than you think you need to cut. Because I would say that the biggest regret that people in the situation think they'll have is that they cut too deep. They let good people go. They cut programs. They cut product lines. When all the dust settles, I think people are going to look back and say, I should have cut deeper. So there's two kinds of regrets at the end of this. You regret that you cut too much and you sacrifice stuff, or you regret that you cut too little and you die. And I would say that you should be more cognizant of cutting too much than too little, because it's better to cut too much than too little in a situation where it's a life or death situation. Number five is, I think at this point you really should be transparent with your people. Cash balances, how things are going. If there was ever a time to be transparent, it's now, because everybody's going through hard times. So it's not like if you're transparent with your employees, they're going to talk to their buddies and their buddies are going to say, oh, yeah, things are going just great where I am, because everybody knows no one's doing great. Number seven is, when you're being transparent, I think one of the mechanisms you have as a company is stock. So stock doesn't affect cash flow. You should be very generous with stock options right now. Number eight is, you need to evaluate your supply chain. That this quest of the cheapest offshore labor may be biting people in the ass right now. That maybe you should have had local manufacturing so that you're less dependent on ships coming across the ocean. You could also make the case that this is going to be a huge boon for robotics, because guess what? Robotics don't get sick. So I think robotics is really going to just take off from now. Number nine, and getting into more positive things, is I think you have to ask the fundamental question right now of, therefore what? And let me explain. So in a boom time, you would go through a therefore what scenario like this. So pretend it's 15 years ago, and you have the insight that everyone's going to have a cell phone. Therefore what? Everybody's cell phone is going to have a camera. Therefore what? Everybody's cell phone with a camera is going to be connected and you can upload pictures. Therefore what? Therefore, you decide to start Instagram. So now we're in a time of great pain, but it is providing also great opportunity. So you look at what this pandemic has caused: online learning, remote work, greater reliance on local manufacturing, e-commerce, having to do business direct. You look at all those things and you ask yourself, therefore what? So seeing the kind of huge changes this is causing, ask yourself, therefore, what are the opportunities? And that will lead to new opportunities. Number 10 is that now is the time to do the shit that you never had time for before, to put procedures into place, to put practices into place, because you were always too busy before. Now is the time, because I think a lot of sins and problems and mistakes will be forgiven now, because everybody has problems and mistakes. And number 11, I think that's 11. Number 11 is, now is the time to learn new skills. And it's not like this pandemic is going to end at some point, black and white, and we're going to go back to, large meetings, large conferences, flying across the country for a meeting. People are going to understand that a virtual meeting can work, that email can work. All these things are so different that you have to learn new skills, that you need to learn to send better email. You need to learn to be better on video conferencing. It's a whole set of new skills. So that, in a nutshell, is what I think we have to do.
I love it. Classic Guy Kawasaki, 10 things you need to do, plus a bonus lesson there. We will capture that and we will share that for everyone post this conversation. Guy, great. Thank you for sharing that wisdom with us. And you're right. You are definitely prepared, as you always are. Kara Swisher, won't be able to hold a candle to your preparedness. The Mark Cuban one was a secret. We didn't announce him yet, okay? So you failed a little. You leaked a little bit there, Guy. That's okay. That's okay. He'll be coming up in a future episode. So let's talk about the economic piece now, right? You've lived through the dot-com crash of 2001. You've lived through the Great Recession, 08, 09, really the housing and financial bubble. And now we're in a new world today. Some are saying it's unlike anything we've ever seen. Tell me about the patterns that you're seeing between the three, and how is COVID going to be different than what the last economic crises that we've experienced in the 21st century?
Sure. Well, Let's be honest. I don't think there's a person alive who's lived through something like this. So yeah, I was at Apple when Apple had its very traumatic layoffs, and Steve Jobs fired, John Scully fired, first layoffs in the history of Apple. But that wasn't a matter of literally life or death. I went through the dot-com implosion. And yeah, stupid companies died. But again, it wasn't a matter of life or death. So I don't think anybody has been through something this traumatic. Maybe someone who has lived in a third world country who went through ethnic cleansing and mass genocide. Yes, but I certainly haven't lived through something that traumatic. I don't profess to have gone through this before and have the wisdom to necessarily navigate this. I think we're all learning as we go every day. And in the business realm, I would caution anybody that if somebody says they know exactly what to do, that's for sure is a person you should not listen to, because we don't know what we're doing. We're making this up as we go.
So, Guy, you are one of the world's foremost experts when it comes to marketing. When we talk to a lot of
Yes.
CMOs, there is a little concern about not wanting to appear tone deaf in this current
Yes.
environment. What's the right communication strategy? How should customers be communicating to their customers or prospects at this time?
Well, I think a good test for this in all your marketing is to ask yourself, am I doing something? Am I asking people to do something that I would not do? And I have not seen a lot of tone deaf marketing or advertising. And I think it's because this pandemic is so serious. You'd have to be really, really, really stupid to not pick up the seriousness of what we're going through and to do something tone deaf. Having said that, I don't want to go down this rat hole again, but there are some tone deaf people in politics right now. But in business, I haven't really seen that. I could make the case that, you know, so airlines, they because of the tax break, airlines had billions of dollars, so they have billions of dollars in less taxes, so they go and buy back their stock so that their stock prices go up, and then now they're in the toilet and they're asking for grants and loans.
Yeah.
And you would think that when they were saving billions in taxes, they would have salted that money away for the bad times so that they would have money to get through the bad times. But no, they bought back their stock. To which I say, well, tough shit. I mean, why am I supporting you? Maybe we don't need as many airlines. So I can't, I have a hard time wrapping my mind around the chutzpah of saying that, investment banks and private equity and airlines, you need to support us. We're too big to fail. But when things are great, see you later. It's all bonuses for us. That I cannot stand.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That we know that business leaders, and particularly, let's say sales leaders, had their 2020 plans, and they wanted to grow and go up and to the right. And now we know that's off the table. Everyone is adjusting their go-to-market strategies, trying to get as much revenue as they can in year. Any thoughts around how business leaders should be thinking about revenue in 2020?
Well, I think basically revenue is king. And I would make a perhaps simplistic argument that often you think that, well, if I do a 50% off sale, if I do a spring cleaning sale, if I discount my product now, if I sell direct, the distribution channel will be upset with me. My brand will be tarnished because I've had to discount my products. I think that all of that will be forgiven and forgotten. Like right now, if you go to Amazon, you can buy the new iPad for $50 off. And, when is the last time you saw an Apple product discounted at Amazon a few weeks after it is announced? Never. And so,
Mm.
if Apple products can be discounted, your products can be discounted. So I think now is not the time to be proud. If you're worried about tarnishing your brand by discounting and doing things like that, let me tell you something. It's going to be really tarnishing for your brand if you're dead. So I think it's all about survival.
Yeah, it's good advice. Let's go into our third phase, the recovery. When we beat COVID, when we get back to normal. And I agree with you. I think it's a dial, not a switch. Certain businesses will be allowed to go back online. Certain individuals that have immunity, I think, will slowly be able to re-enter the workforce and the economy. Um, what should tech companies be doing now to best prepare themselves for a post-COVID recovery? What could they be doing today?
I think that they have to understand that we're not going back to old business practices, right? So I think people will probably learn that, yes, you can be productive remotely. Yes, virtual meetings happen and are productive. I think that, people will want to keep the 2 hours they got back by not having to commute. So there's that kind of productivity changes. But I go back to one of the 10 things I mentioned, that ask yourself, therefore what? So as you see how these huge changes are happening, what opportunities does that uncover? And I don't know what the answer is to every one of them, but definitely when you see this kind of change happening, you're going to look back 5 years from now and say, that was like, I look back right now and say, it was so obvious that you should have started at Instagram, because people were getting phones, with cameras, and there was internet access on phones with cameras. Like, so obvious, people would want to share pictures. Well, so 5 years from now, what are we going to look back and say? That was so obvious. People weren't going to have meetings anymore. People were going to rely on digital communication. People weren't going to, jump on airplanes to have meetings all the time. People were going to wanted more robotics, because robotics don't get infected with flu. I don't know what the answer is, Razor, but that's the kind of outlook you need to think. Therefore, what should I do?
Got it. Let's talk about, winners and losers. And I know making predictions in an unprecedented time is difficult, but I'm going to make you do it anyway. Who do you see, COVID is going to be, weeks, more months. It's going to be long enough that new habits get formed, and maybe we don't go back to the old ways of doing things. Specifically, who do you think is going to be in the winner's circle post-COVID? What habits are going to stick? And who do you see just not ever being relevant or having a diminishing role going forward?
The negative part is hard, okay, because we're only a few months into this, so I don't know who's going to pivot and change their models and all this kind of stuff. Clearly, in the short term, Zoom is a winner, though it's had some of this privacy issues, right? But you have to assume that Zoom is going to fix that. I could tell you something. If I look at my own personal habits, right now, how do I get my groceries? Once a week, I order from Instacart. I had never used Instacart before. So, Instacart and these delivery services, they have their issues about protecting their employees better and, this kind of stuff. But Instacart, wow. We could just go down the line. So think about this. So think of VRBO, right? So VRBO, the half-empty glass would say, it's going to be a long time before I want strangers, renting out my spare studio, renting out my bedroom, renting out my house. Or you could say, well, there's going to be more of that ever than before, because people don't want to go into large hotels and, this kind of stuff. So I don't know. Do you build a case that it's good for VRBO or bad for VRBO? I don't know, Razor. But Well, we're going to know in 5 years. We're going to look back with hindsight. With rental cars, well, is the rental car business going to go totally in the toilet because people aren't going to fly to other cities to make business meetings? Or will rental cars be stronger because no one is going to want to tie up an asset in a car anymore? It's all going to be short term. Is Turo going to be better or worse because people are going to share this car, or they're going to say, God, I don't want any stranger using my car ever? And so you could build these cases either way, and I don't think anybody really knows. It's kind of like going to Las Vegas, and you say, well, it's either going to be red or black, but I don't know. Put your money down and spin the wheel.
Yeah, listen, you mentioned Instacart. We've been a huge fan of Apoorva, proud Canadian founder. That was a made in Canada solution. Clearly, we're gonna have them on a future show. They're gonna clearly do well. Many people I've heard are using Instacart for the first time, and I'm surprised you didn't mention Canva. We're huge fans of the work that Melanie and her team are doing. In a time where we have to become our own graphic designers, Canva is clearly doing well, providing a much needed service for all of us who don't have the technical skills. So, talk to me about what you've seen in your own networking portfolio.
Sure. So for those who don't know, I'm the chief evangelist of a company called Canva, and it's an online graphics design service. So basically what Canva does is it empowers anyone to create beautiful designs to communicate better. And one of the hottest products of Canva right now is customized Zoom backgrounds. So the case for Canva to be made is that, well, companies are doing cutbacks. So they will cut back, the graphics department. So now instead of having a bunch of graphic artists sitting around using Photoshop and Illustrator that you make a request of and they provide graphics for you, those people they're going to be fewer people. So now if you want graphics right away, you have to roll your own. And in that world of people creating their own graphics and their own documents and their own photos and all that, Canva is going to rock. So that's the case to be made for Canva. And whenever I do these kind of things, Razor, I find it distasteful when an employee of a company is invited to make a presentation or a speech about something bigger than his or her company, right? And so I don't like to go and like pimp the companies I'm working for in the middle of a keynote or the middle of a session like this, where the object of this is to provide value to all of your guests. So I hope I provide some insight into how to prepare and deal with this pandemic. I'm not here to pimp Canva. Now, God bless you. If you want to use Canva, hallelujah. That's a very good outcome. So I'm taking the high road. I'm trying to take the high road in everything I do these days.
Got it, Guy. Well, that's why I brought it up. I knew you'd be a little humble. So we're going to go to our live questions, Q&A, Guy Kawasaki, AMA, Ask Me Anything. So we've been monitoring questions on our social channels and here on the Zoom Q&A. So please keep them coming. Our first question is from Greg at Decor and More. He wants to ask Guy Kawasaki, what do you see happening to the live events world post-COVID? How does that industry?
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I mean, the bulk of my income is derived from speaking, and there is no speaking anymore. So I have been engaged to do keynote speeches virtually to virtual meetings. So that's kicking in like never before. But the day of, well, you tell me, Razor, I mean, the day of 2,000 people coming to a building in Toronto, that's not going to happen in the near future. Maybe the fall, best case, right? And that's a challenge. And I think people are going to be very hesitant to get on these metal tubes flying in the air where you're not 6 feet from somebody, you're 6 inches from somebody. And then you go to a large meeting hall where there's 3,000 people 6 inches from each other. Wow. Hard to imagine that's going to come right back. Well, for that matter, sporting events. Like, what would you do? Knock on wood. Ask this of your future secret guest. What do you do when there's no sporting events? I mean, will TV revenue be enough? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, it's going to be a whole interesting world to see what both is safe to do from a health perspective, but also what customer sentiment is going to be in terms of how people are going to feel, again, re-engaging in large groups again. It's something obviously we think about at Elevate, and I'm so proud of the team, how quickly they pivoted to be able to deliver. We're very mission oriented around uniting the world's innovators such as yourself, but a festival is one vehicle. We could also deliver it digitally too. So we've also had to innovate and pivot in this time as well too.
If I may make a point, that at an event where it's 2, 3, 4,000 people, if you're in the first 10 rows, you're looking at the person on the stage. If you're in the 20th, 30th, 40th, 50th row, you're looking at an image that's magnified on screen anyway. So I would make the case that for much of an audience, you're looking at a digital representation of the keynote speaker, even if the keynote speaker is in the same room. So it's going to be a skill for presenters like me to provide great speeches digitally. It's harder because right now I'm staring into a little camera right there. There's no feedback. There's no nothing. And the camera is there, but the video is down there. So the temptation is to look at the video, not at the camera. So it takes so much discipline to stare into the camera, even though you think you want to stare into the eyes of Razor down there. And so this is a whole different skill set. And, how do you know when you crack a joke in this scenario if people are laughing or not? There's no feel for the audience. So that's going to be a whole different skill set for speakers.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. We've got Fred Newman from Zoom asking a question. He's from SciMode, asking both Razor and Guy, how does the startup community, what happens to the startup community? What are the impacts? Is there going to be do you see an increase in demand for companies wanting to buy for startups, or do you think they may take a more conservative approach? What happens to the startup community after this?
Well, honestly, it's hard to build the case that this is good for startups, right? I mean, there's going to be a retrenchment of investment because the companies are going to be hesitant to try small, young companies that are probably undercapitalized. So don't get me wrong, this is not good for startups. But having said that, again, we're going to look back and say, 5 years from now, we're going to look back and say, wow, that company started in the absolute worst of times, but they seized an opportunity. They provided something that other large companies couldn't pivot to, couldn't understand, didn't get the vision, didn't ask, therefore what? And so bad times usually create great companies. And actually, I'd also make the case that great times usually yield shit companies, because in a great time, when the rising tide is floating all boats, any butthead can be a captain in a rising tide. It's someone who's very good who can be a captain in a falling tide. So again, to summarize, I can't build a case that it's great, but that's the nature of entrepreneurship. That if you're a person who believes that you can only start a company when the economy is great, when venture capital is flowing freely and easily, and when there is no competition, and there's a large untapped market, if that's what you're waiting for, you are not an entrepreneur.
Yeah, you said all the good answers. So I'm just going to go to the next question, Guy. We've got Pratik from TD Bank asking about the job market. How do you see tech jobs currently post-COVID? What skills do you see being increasingly in demand now that we are, navigating this uncertain time?
Well, I would make the case that just as I'm suggesting that you ask the question, therefore what, for new products and new services, you could ask that question for careers, right? So if you look at what's happening now, uh, uh, if you are thinking of going into a career of meeting planning, this is an entirely different skill set. So meeting planning before was, how do I book the venue? How do I negotiate with the hotel? How do I make sure that we spend the right amount of money per head per meal? How do I ensure that I get the right speakers to come to the thing? All that is off, right? So now, if you're a meeting planner, it's what platform do I use to ensure that everybody gets a good experience online? How do we register everybody digitally? How do we make sure that the speakers are, presenting well? It's an entirely different skill set that you would figure out by asking the question, if there's no more face-to-face meetings for a while, therefore what? Well, then you got to be a digital meeting planner, and you have to learn how to optimize a digital meeting. And I think you go down through careers just like that. And virtual assistants, oh God, virtual assistants got to explode now, because you're not going to the office and seeing your secretary and your personal assistant and your administrative aide anymore. And that's a whole different way of interacting. So just ask the question, therefore what? The ability to build graphics with Canva, it's a whole new skill set now. Much more valuable than when you had your own dedicated graphics design team.
Great, Guy. Nergis from the Zoom chat wants to know how you think this is going to impact the investment community. Are you going to see VCs, holding on to their cash? Are they still writing checks? What are the impacts around of raising capital right now?
Well, I can't build the case that this is good. Right? I mean, you'd have to be pretty delusional to think that it's good. If I were a venture capitalist today, I would be telling my portfolio essentially what I just told you. Cash is king. Turn inventory into cash. Don't worry about your so-called brand. Worry about survival. Use stock, not money. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And those have very deep ramifications on a startup, because in the rising tide, you say, well, I'll just go to Series C, no problem. And we have to preserve our image, so we're gonna throw this humongous product introduction on Moscone, and we're gonna spend $50,000 on white wine and shrimp, and we're gonna bring in, I don't know, Justin Bieber to sing at our cocktail party and all this kind of stuff. All that goes away. So it means that you have to be much more tight with your dollars. And venture capitalists, now, if I were a venture capitalist, you think, okay, so thank you, God, that I raised my last fund. I'm going to get 2.5% management fee on the $1 billion dollars we raised. But wow, the next fund, whew. So the next fund, you're going to go to who? You're going to go to employee pension funds, insurance companies, and all that. And you're going to say, well, we're raising another $1 billion fund. Well, who knows what happened to the rest of that portfolio, right? So if you're the person, the money manager of a large pension fund, and you had money in real estate and money in common stock, and you had some private equity, and you had some real estate, and all this kind of stuff, and you look at your portfolio and like, oh my God, commercial real estate's in the toilet, because nobody's trying to rent large office space anymore, because guess what? Everything's virtual. And so, you go down through your portfolio is in the toilet. And so now, do you have allocation for the next round of venture capital? I think venture capital is going to be playing a lot less golf in the near future. They might
Yeah,
actually have to earn their money.
the impacts are just compounding, right? It's so unpredictable of how this impacts so many other businesses and industries. Guy Kawasaki, thank you so much. This is all the time we have today. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your insight, your time. I'm eternally grateful, Guy.
Thank you, Riz. It's a pleasure. And I hope to see you in person sometime again in Canada, where we can eat donuts again.
Right? Drink Tim Hortons, play hockey, all the good stuff, right, Guy?
Like good stuff. Yes, yes,
It'll happen.
yes.
Speaking of Canada, we have a gift for you, a little token of our appreciation from everyone here at Elevate, the thousands of viewers. We have partnered with Trees Canada to plant a Guy Kawasaki forest in your honor, right? Who doesn't want their
And
own
where would this
forest,
be?
Guy?
Well, where's this
Uh,
forest going to be?
This forest is in a magical location in Canada. I don't actually have the address, but I do know that people are hard at work planting a Guy Kawasaki forest. You know, once we do beat COVID, we do have a climate crisis that we need to tend to. So know that you will be doing your part by sharing your time and wisdom today. So, Guy, we will meet again. It will be in person. Thank you for joining us on Elevate Live.
All right. Thank you very much. And, everybody wash your hands and stay more than 6 feet away from people. Wash your hands and stay more than 6 feet away from people. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Great advice. Next week, we're going to have media mogul Kara Swisher live here at Elevate, April 22nd at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. We will send you a link to be able to sign up to that show or the entire series. We'd love to do this. We're doing it every Wednesday. It's a little lunch and learn with some of the global icons that we've had at Elevate. To register, you can go to elevate.ca/mainstage or email follow-up. Today's show was produced by our executive producer, Lisa Zarzechny. Thank you so much to Lisa and the team for producing this. It was done completely virtually. Everybody's doing this from a home office. I'm so grateful and proud of our team. And we want you to continue to join the conversation. Social channels are going crazy. We're using Elevate Live to continue the conversation. And after our show, please take 1 minute, stay on the Zoom, fill out the survey. We literally read every comment. We want your feedback. We want to know what we can do to better serve our community. So thank you so much. Stay healthy, stay safe, and let's please take care of each other. Thanks so much. My name is Razor, and I'll see you next week at Elevate Live.